Welcome to Creating Disney Magic with Lee Cockrell. Lessons in leadership, management, and customer service. You can create magic too. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I am here, of course, with Lee Cockrell. Lee, how are you doing this week?
Well, I'm good. We had torrential rains here, so everything is really green.
Well, we have had slow, steady rain here in the state of Washington, but it wouldn't be winter without gray days of rain. Lee, I have a question for you. I've heard you talk about training. I've heard you talk about development. What is the difference between the two? What's the difference between training and development?
That's a good one, and I would tell you most people have those confused. You'll talk to companies, say we have a training and development department. And I tell them to explain what that means, and they pretty much talk about training. Here's how I think about it. Training is when you put as many people as you want in a room, 10, 20, 100, 500, and teach them how to do something. Kind of teach them. When I finish with you, you can run the cash register. You can do this procedure. You can fold the clothes properly. You can bag the groceries properly. Training. I'm teaching you how to do something the way we want it done in our company. A standard, a measurement, training. So there's one side, and that's what most people do out there in the world. But development to me is when you have to have those one-on-one difficult conversations with somebody in your organization that works for you. And you got to sit down, take them in the office, close the door, and give them some hard, cold facts about being late to work, about their attitude, the way they spoke to somebody in a meeting this week, the way they came in looking, dressed, didn't have their shoes polished, didn't have their name tag on. That's development. One-on-one, closed door, and you sit down and you clarify for them it's this, because at the end of the day, training is easy. And by the way, training is not very emotional. That's why I think most people out there in the world are doing a lot of training. Development is very emotional. Sitting down and having to have a very difficult conversation with somebody about some very difficult performance issues and attitude and maybe even character issues or whatever it is, that's hard. And that's why most people don't do it. So I always tell people, make sure you're doing both. Make sure you're training your people and you're developing them. And I will guarantee you that the development part is what's going to make them successful. Training is easy. It's learning how to do something, one thing, but development is learning those really deep things about how you behave, how you treat people, being to work on time, getting your work done on time, all of those kinds of things. Development. It's the same with your kids. You can teach them how to ride a bike, but I'm sure those conversations for development are around when they talk back or they don't do what they're supposed to do or they have an attitude or you'll see as yours become teenagers, you'll be doing more development. And they got to know you're serious. And you got to tell them what's going to happen. There's got to be consequences for developmental issues that people are not focused on. Training. You train them to ride the bike. They fall off the bike. Okay, fine. Eventually, they learn to do it. But if you don't teach them the right things when they're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old about telling the truth, honesty, integrity, those kind of things, that's the kind of things that are going to take them down in their lives. And it'll shame on the parents and at work, shame on the boss for not having developmental conversations about teaching people all those things that really matter. A lot of them have to do with values and character and just a basic respect for people. And a lot of people need to hear it because they don't know. Their parents didn't teach them, and they may have worked in companies where people treated people badly, and you got to straighten them out. And you got to make sure you get them on the right path because that will mean more to them and being successful and being promoted and having a good, strong career and a good family life too, probably. Development. Make sure you set time up and maybe even next week, each one of you sit down and think about somebody you need to schedule a developmental meeting with. Call them in and have that meeting so that they can start to get better now. Don't wait another year. Tell them now so they can turn that performance around, turn that attitude around, and all of the things that have to do with being a professional leader and manager.
Well, Lee, you know I had several years working in government, and I'm sure large organizations can be guilty of this too. But in government, too often I saw that training was just so the box could be checked that we trained you on this, and if you did something stupid around this area, it was your fault because you sat through the training. How can an organization make sure that their training isn't just simply putting people through the motions or checking the box to say, yes, they did it?
Yeah, I think when you start a training class, right up front, you have a good conversation for 10 or 15 minutes. Why we're doing this training, what the expectation is for following this training. I think testing people to make sure the learning really did take place. Yeah, I don't know how many classes you've been in where you sat there and you weren't paying attention. You were thinking about going to the beach this weekend or something, daydreaming because there was just kind of boring. The teacher wasn't very good. It was not presented in a very effective way. So I would say clarity up front about why we're doing this training, the expectation for how you expect people to perform it after the training is, and the consequences maybe even for not following it. And then testing. Test people so they absolutely, and tell them in advance, I'm going to test you at the end of this training to make sure you know what you're doing. And then people will pay more attention. And then when you find people not doing it the way you trained them, don't let it go. Step right over there right away. Don't wait another day and say, hey, listen, didn't you understand that when we had this training this morning, that this is the way we do it here? There's the Disney way and there's everybody else's way. And so we don't care about the other way. We have our way of doing things. That's why we have consistency. That's why we have a world-class reputation. And if anybody out there wants to have that, training matters. Consistency matters. Doing it the same way every time matters. And the training keeps getting done the same way until you change it and retrain people to do it a different way. And that's how you get greatness. You can be average. That's where everybody's doing whatever they want. And then you can have greatness where everybody's well-trained and precision. Precision. Yeah.
I think Disney is well known for being so good at training. And you've talked about training many times on this show. But let's look a little more at development. You said quite often development is having the hard conversations. And I want to also add a different spin to that. Are there cases where you see where somebody is particularly good at something, or maybe with just they're not doing a bad job, but with a little more mentoring or nudge, they can turn into something better? Does that happen at Disney where you see somebody could be even better at something? They're not doing a poor job, but you bring them in for more development?
Oh, absolutely. It even happened to me in my career where I had bosses that sit down and talk to me about things that, I took things, I was very defensive. I didn't like feedback. I took everything personally. And I had bosses who set me down and straightened me out. And that's why I had a successful career, because they cared about me. So I see that all the time. People that don't even realize what their potential is, for whoever knows. We don't even know what reason. But boy, if you're a leader out there, you have a huge opportunity to make that person have a better career by tenfold than they would have if you just ignore it and let them be kind of good, but don't help them move to greatness. And it's the same with your kids. You could ignore a lot of things and let it go, it'd be easier, but you can make those great kids instead of, I always ask people, you want to have good kids or great kids? You want to have a good job or a great job? You want to have a good health or great health? So leadership and parents they have huge influence on making people better than they ever dreamed they could be. And that's a responsibility. And hopefully people step up and understand that responsibility. And it's not easy. It's hard to have those conversations.
That reminds me of when I first became a park ranger, the park manager at the park I was at, Jack Hart. He really poured into my development just by being there. He would let me ask any questions. Sometimes we'd go for lunch. Sometimes he would just say, hey, let me show you something. And he'd pull me aside and either show me something new or say, here's how you maybe could do something better. And it really didn't take much out of his day, but what a tremendous impact it had on me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're lucky that you had that. Just think if you hadn't. Just think of all the things you learn from people who care about you and help you. I mean, I just think about that all the time. And so you can either be the one being the recipient of it, or you can be the leader that's given it. And people appreciate it, and they'll trust you more, and they'll have a much better life and career. And that's when you're a teacher. That's what I meant by teacher. When you see somebody can do something a little better, step over there and show them how to do it. Next thing you know, they can do it better. And that's a big part of your job is you walk your operation and you're observing performance and teaching people and turning it around and changing it, showing them how to do it a little better. Absolutely. Big deal. It's a big deal.
Yes.
And we're all lucky when we work for somebody who cares enough about us to help us get better instead of just being the same every day and helping us learn to stand out and to really deliver great performance. And that's what we try to do at Disney. We want every cast member to impress the guests. So hopefully if you see you're here for a week and you run into 50 or 60 cast members, you walk away saying, wow, very consistent. Everybody was great. So that's the goal in life.
Lee, we have a question this week from a listener, Russ Brewer. And Russ asked if you have any tactics or suggestions on how to navigate out of a failed partnership and keep the business going.
failed partnership meaning financially or relationship-wise? Do you know what he meant?
He did not elaborate. He just said failed partnership. So, but since he wants to keep the business going, I would say it's probably relationship-wise, the partnership has failed, and Russ likely wants to keep the business going and needs to get out of the partnership.
Well, probably the only way you can get out of it is buy your way out of it, unless it's losing so much money the other person wants to get out. I mean, a lot of partnerships break up. One partner buys out the other one and gets out of it. And or if it's just a relationship problem and maybe it could be fixed, is to, unfortunately, you're going to sit down and have a strong conversation with that person or get a mediator in between to talk to both of you. I don't know enough detail here to tell you, but when the word failed, that's pretty serious. And it's probably not going to get better. So I would either try to figure out a financial restructuring by pushing that person out or moving them out or talking them into leaving and working out how you can pay them off to own the whole business yourself. And that happens a lot, by the way, partnerships that don't work out. Just look at all the marriages that fail, and it's a partnership that's failing often. And you got to work hard at it, but I don't know enough detail what he means exactly. But if it's financial, it's probably the person that's in it with you wants some compensation. If that's part of the value of the company, I don't know what the company's valued at, or the partnership, or a strong discussion, or maybe they both need to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist together and try to work out their little problem, whatever it is. Yeah.
That is difficult. And let's look at it from another way. The partnership is broken up and one person has been able to keep the business going. How do you address that potentially with employees or customers or vendors that may just be nervous about what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of fall back to tell the truth. It's kind of an odd thing, but you got to tell people because, by the way, everybody knows what's going on. The two partners may not know it. All the employees already know. And the word gets out, and the vendors will get to know too. And the quicker you tell the truth and get the vendors on the phone and talk to them and tell them what you're doing and you want to work with them and you're going to be clear with people. Don't let them find out through the back door, and the employees either. If you don't tell the truth and tell people what's really going on in a small company, they already know, and it's going to hurt you. And some of your people are going to start leaving. Maybe if you sit down and talk to them about it and tell them what you're going to do and what the action's going to be, you can make sure that attitude stays strong and they keep taking care of the customer and they keep doing their jobs till you get back on your feet. And I tell you, the truth is usually the answer. Bring people into the problem and they'll help you solve it.
Yes, and how many unfortunate situations have we seen where employees know something, but they don't know everything, and so they take what they know and fill in the rest, and that usually doesn't work out well.
Yeah, they fill in the wrong story. That's the problem. They make it worse than it is sometimes, and that's why you don't want to have a lack of telling the truth. People go home every night, and they finish the story in their mind, and it's better that the boss finishes the story. Don't let everybody go out and dream up what they think's going on. That's not going to have the right relationship with your employees, and they're going to be nervous, and they're going to think about looking for another job, and they're going to be thinking about that instead of their performance and taking care of the customers. And when in doubt, tell the truth.
If you have a question you would like Lee to answer on Creating Disney Magic, please just send it in. You can send it to Lee at leecockrell.com, or me, Jody, at jodymayberry.com. And most of the questions Lee has not seen ahead of time. So these are always just spur of the moment answers, which is a lot of fun for all of us. And you can find this show on iTunes. You can find it on leecockrell.com, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio. If you listen on iTunes, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave a rating and a review. It just helps other people discover this show, and we feel the more people we can get listening, the more people we can help spread this message of creating magic to. Thank you for listening to Creating Disney Magic, and you can find out more information about Lee at leecockrell.com. Until next week, go out and create magic for others.